it's in progress. And then before we go too much further, I'm just going to give a little bit of context to Healthy Aging Core Alberta and then Healthy Aging Alberta as well. So I work for Healthy Aging Alberta. I'm the digital engagement coordinator, and my name is Erin. Core is really the knowledge and learning platform for Healthy Aging Alberta, which is a provincial-wide initiative. CORE stands for Collaborative Online Resources and Education. It is a part of Healthy Aging Alberta, and Healthy Aging Alberta itself is backboned by the United Way of Calgary and area. And if you're not already a member, maybe a lot of you are because that's how you got to us today, but you're welcome to sign up for a free account. And there's a lot of resources, news items, just information about the sector available on there. It's really a communication and content sharing tool, a collaboration tool. Just a way for community-based senior serving or CBSS organizations to learn about, connect with each other, as well as with some of our allied partners, such as housing and health. So, what is Healthy Aging Alberta, though? I keep saying that. So it is a provincial initiative. It's a network of, again, CBSS organizations working across the province and united by a shared vision to make Alberta one of the best places in the world to grow older. There is an entire kind of history there about how Healthy Aging Alberta emerged, really out of a realization that Alberta's rapidly aging older population really does want to age in community, age in their own homes, but often the thousands of community-based organizations doing wonderful work across the province haven't been really connected to each other for a lot of different reasons. And so it's really that attempt to connect and unite the sector. Those organizations providing non-medical community supports, and then also connecting them again to our sector allies or system allies, in housing and health. So there's a whole much more I could say, but we have community regional developers working across the province, connecting in different ways. If you ever want to reach out to me so I can connect you to one of them that's working in your region to learn more, can certainly do that. And then just a little bit of insight into the reach of CORE. And these are statistics as of, I think, yesterday when I put them together. So we have almost 2,000 members now. And again, membership is free. It basically just means you're a user of the site. We have over 4,000 pieces of content on CORE. I will say not all of that is current. I am also in the progress of cleaning out some of the older content. We have, and this isn't unique visitors, but we have 5,000 plus hits on the site per month. And we have 18 groups that are connecting or collaborating on key issues. And one of those groups is the group that is hosting this event today. And Betty is one of the group leads of that group. And so I'm going to hand it back over to Betty. And I will stop talking now. So welcome again, Betty.
Thank you, Erin. And I just want to say thanks to Erin, because what would we do without her, right? So thank you, Erin, for all your support. Okay, let me introduce you to the team for the Intergenerational Community of Practice in Alberta. So there's me at the top. I'm an intergenerational trainer and consultant. If you've come to these before, you will have noticed that it used to say I was a trainer with Linkages, but this is a good time to tell you, if you haven't heard yet, Linkages Society of Alberta, that has existed for almost 30 years, no longer has funding. And so we have had to close our doors. And yet I was so passionate about the intergenerational work that we were doing and that I learned all about, that I decided I'm not quitting. I can't work for Linkages anymore. But I am still working as a volunteer here, and I don't intend to quit anytime soon. So I'm so glad that you're part of this team or this group. And then we have Corey Ladwick. She's team lead for seniors, adult, and community programs in the county of Grand Prairie. Janice Munfrey, she's the senior analyst with the Ministry of Seniors, and she represents the ministry on our team. And then we have Erin, who you've already met, who's just an awesome support. Okay, so having said that, we're just not going to waste any more time. Not that that was a waste, but let me introduce our guest for today. And what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce Carol, and then she is going to talk to you about ethical wills. And if you have any questions, don't interrupt her, just write them down. And then after she's done, we're going to have about half an hour of Q&A or discussion, okay? So let me introduce Carol to you. Carol first learned about ethical wills when her husband was dying 40 years ago. Someone came to support her and her husband and told them about this ancient tradition, and her husband dictated his ethical will to her. It has served as a continuing guide to her and to her 52-year-old son, only 11 when his father died. That ethical will still remains on the wall of her son's house. A retired social worker and the founder of the Edmonton Bereavement Center of Jewish Families, now renamed the Healing Center, Carol now volunteers with Pilgrim's Hospice in Edmonton, where she continues supporting dying people by taking down their words in the form of an ethical will. She has facilitated many groups in senior centers for people to write their own ethical wills. But she knows that this activity can be done at any stage of life, adolescents to seniors. The opportunity to examine our own values and share those insights with others is one of the great gifts of life. And she hopes today to explore the possibilities of creating programs, which is where intergenerational comes in, creating programs in which both young people and seniors can offer this gift to each other. Okay, so Carol, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to all of you. I'm really excited to do this today. I'm going to start with talking a bit about the principle behind ethical wills, and then a little bit of history, and just give you an idea of what it's like. And then it's kind of up to us to talk about how that could be applied intergenerationally, but I certainly think it could be. So the principles include that we all need to matter. We need attention, the feeling that someone is interested in us, importance, the belief that someone actually cares about what we think or do, recognition, the belief that others will be proud of our accomplishments or saddened by our failures, dependence, the belief that others need you, and appreciation, the belief that your efforts are appreciated. And an ethical will is one way of expressing all of that and giving that to each other. Ethical wills date from medieval and Renaissance times. Actually, the very first ethical will is talked about in the Old Testament, when Jacob was dying and he called his 4 sons to his bedside and basically said to each one of them, this is what I really appreciate about you. Here's some of the things I might be concerned about. Here's what I wish for you. And here's the values that I have held in my life that I hope you will carry on. And that's really the core of what an ethical will is about. Ethical value, will passing on. So instead of looking at our passing on valuables, instead we talk about passing on our values. It's an ancient process that's found in all cultures. Everyone has some form of it. The way I learned about it was the Jewish way, because it was a rabbi I talked to. And in the Jewish tradition, it is called an ethical will. But there are so many other ways that this can be done. It's basically a framework for what we all want to do, which is in some way to leave a legacy of who we are. It's not a legal document. It can be attached to a will, but it in itself is not a legal document. And it's basically a self-examination of what you've learned in your lifetime. whether your lifetime is 20 years or your lifetime is 80 years. It's deciding what really counts in your life. What has been the most important things in your life? We actually did a session of it with Seniors Center Without Walls, and we called it What Matters Most. Very often people get caught in ethical will and say, well, is it a will? And we end up having a lot of discussions about whether there are better names. I just give you the historical name for it, the traditional name, but it can be called anything, but it captures the idea of what matters in my life. What do I hope is still in the world even after I'm gone? It's a chance to learn about your own life, to affirm who you are, what you've done, and what matters to you. The purpose is to think about your own identity and your own values and how you want to transmit those values, the legacy you wish to live. And as long as we are in the world, no matter what age we are, we can say, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and be able to share that with each other. Betty told you a bit about how I first learned about it. I want to give you an example of what an ethical will sounds like. And I will give you a little piece from the one that my first husband, Gary, gave to me, dictated to me. So in 1983, he died of cancer. And when he was ill, a rabbi came and talked to us. We were not very connected to the Jewish community. And he asked us, do we know what ethical wills are? And neither of us did. So he explained it. And then he asked Gary if he would like to do an ethical will. So 4 days before Gary died, he dictated this ethical will to me. And as Betty has said, it is still on the wall of my 52-year-old son's home because it meant so much to him. And I, too, have my own copy. So this is a little bit of what he said, because he was a man who had an 11-year-old son and knew that he wouldn't be able to be there to help his son grow up. And so this was his chance to say what he believed and teach his son that. I do acknowledge that I have given my son the ability to go his own way and the strength he'll need. If people won't let him follow his own path, he's got to find a way to do it and not give in. I know he's only 11, but I have always given him, I hope, the strength to reject prejudice and hate, and I want him to keep that and never let go. I want him to judge everyone he meets by themselves. Don't be taken in by con men, but don't be so closed that you hide away. I believe that the most important thing in the world to look for, even if you don't find it, is wisdom. I don't know what it is, but it's probably something different for everybody. Even trying to be wise, I think, is more than any amount of money is worth. But I really think that that's step 2. If you can't be wise, be funny. And that was very much who he was. And this 40 years later still means so much. So I'm going to give you an idea of what the questions are in an ethical will. As Betty has said, I've used it in Senior Center Without Walls, where we just do it by telephone. I've run groups of seniors in senior centers to do it, where they do their own. I don't interview in any way. They just sort of provide a facilitation for it. And in the last year, I've been doing it with people who are very close to dying, are not able to write their own, but I interview them. Right now, we actually have 10 people I'm training right now to do this as well. We interview them, and they tell us what is important in their lives. We write that out, type it up, and give a copy to them so that they can pass it to their friends or family while they're still alive, or save it for after they've died and that it is left for their family. So I've used it in many ways and kind of come full circle to being kind of the scribe for people who are dying. But when I first heard about the core group and the intergenerational section, I thought, what a lovely thing it would be to have people who are very young and people who are old talking to each other, not so much interviewing seniors. We do that for people who cannot do it themselves, but instead actually go through the process of creating their own ethical wills and sharing them. What are the most important things when you're 20 years old? What are the most important things when you're 80? I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to hear each other. So I'll just go through a bit of what the topics are. I'll give you at the end of this my email. I can send you a copy of that. It's pretty straightforward, though. You can kind of make up your own with this sort of template. But you can also contact me and I'll get anything to you if you'd like. So we start with just personal information. Where were you born? Do you have something really meaningful that happened in your childhood or in your adolescence or your adulthood that really kind of changed things for you? We also ask, are there things that have happened in history that have changed your life personally? And I mean, we all are now in the middle of having really lived a very different life in the last few years. And I think on some level, everybody has been very affected by what it means to live in a COVID life and a semi-post-COVID life. So those are the kinds of things. For me, I was 16 when Kennedy was assassinated. I lived in the States at that point. That was one of the turning points for me. So everybody has them at whatever age. It's a chance to talk about them. The second thing that we talk about is personal happiness and satisfaction. And these, again, are kind of suggestions for the kinds of things we can talk about. Are there quotations that have really stood in your head that no matter when they happened, you still remember them and perhaps you even live by them? Do you have important rituals that for you are part of comfort, part of representing who you are? What are the things that have guided you in life? Has it been teachers? Has it been things you've seen on television? Has it been a book? And one of the most important questions at this point in your life, what are you most proud of in your life? So really looking at yourself, at who you are, how you mattered in the world to others, how you matter to yourself. We do a session on role of others, which acknowledges other people that have been there to help us in some way in our lives. And in fact, what have you learned from those people? So we share some of those lessons. The fourth section I call life advice. When we do it in person, it's really funny because most of the time people don't really want our advice. But here we have a full session where everybody can give their advice about everything and we listen to each other. So things like, what are your values? What are your values about friendship, love, relationships, work, education, knowledge? And then an important question in helping us to look at ourselves is, given these values, how have I stood up for my values? So if we are doing this kind of thing with people in the fullness of their life, this can be a time to reflect on, okay, these are my values. Do I live up to them? Do I want to? Can I in the future? So it can be part of an evolving response. The fifth one is forgiveness and gratitude. Maybe we have regrets and may want to say, I'm sorry during this time. We may say, I want you to say you're sorry. I need to forgive you. I may need to apologize. I may need to forgive you. Gratitude for our lives. And one of the questions that always gets incredibly interesting answers, which is, what will I miss most when my life is over? And as I certainly learned in Gary's death, our lives can be over at any time. He had just turned 39, the date of a month before he died. So we can die at any point, and maybe it's important to kind of know at this point in our life, what would I miss most? Because that's another way of saying, what am I really grateful for in my life? The final thing is, what do we hope continues beyond my life? Generations and generations and generations, centuries from now. We are all right now in a period where, unfortunately, we are seeing really horrible things happening. You turn on the news, you usually have to take about an hour to recover from even watching anything. Certainly, we wish all kinds of things for the world that maybe are not there now, but we certainly hope will be over time. And so what do I wish stays in the world beyond me? Something I genuinely believe. And I hope my great, 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 great grandchildren will also understand that value and believe it. So that's basically it. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a kind of framework for our really reflecting on who we are, who we want other people to know we are. While I'm doing these interviews now with Pilgrim's Hospice, I often ask, what do you want people to remember about you? And very often I get, I'm not one of those kind of people. I don't say that. They'll do what they want. They'll remember what they want. But sometimes it's kind of nice to think, who really have I been in this world? And who would I like people 10 generations further go, oh, that's who she was, that person that was somewhere in my life, somewhere in the world. So what we think matters, who we are matters, it matters to us, and it matters to generations way beyond our lives. Writing an ethical will is one way we can let future generations know who we are at any stage of our life and what we've stood for. An ethical will is an opportunity to create, as I said, a legacy of our values as opposed to our valuables. And we can begin to know ourselves better as well, who we are, what we've been, what's been most important in our lives. And shared at any age, we can really share who we are with others that we would like to know us better. These days, there's not a lot of talk with each other. We do things like, and it's wonderful that we can do Zoom, that we can do this sort of thing. But there aren't that many opportunities to say, this is who I really am. Who are you? And I think in sharing ethical wills, we can share our values with you, hear your values, and have a discussion that's very, very rare in our time, a discussion like no other. And so that's why I thought it was a good idea to bring forward the idea that up until now, I have thought of ethical wills in terms of seniors. That's how I've worked with it. But I think it would be a wonderful way to open up discussions with people of all ages and give them a framework in which to have that conversation. So I'm open to all kinds of questions. If you would like, I can put that outline on a share screen for you. I will put my email on a share screen as well. Or if you just want to write me and tell me about some of your ideas about where this might fit in the work that you do. So I will take it back to Betty. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Wow, Carol, I am so motivated. I just want to leave the meeting and go and write my own ethical will right now.
A little more time and you can do it.
Okay.
Enjoy it. For many people, it's an incredible joy to be able to do it, and to do it with other people just brings along just incredible conversations.
Well, one thing I like you said, for people to reflect, who am I in this life? And I thought, because we're a group that believes in intergenerational work, and the programs that I facilitate are youth and seniors. And I thought, wouldn't it be great for the youth to answer, who do I want to be in this life? Like if they hear that from an older person who they, what that person has been or who they've been, and then to actually reflect and think about, who do they want to be? How do they want to show up in their lives? Amazing.
And it's being aware of your values, but not only being aware of them, saying, do I live to my values? And if I don't, what can I do to live by them? Very much that kind of focus. Yeah.
That's awesome. Carol, I'm wondering, you said you have a template that you're willing to share. Can you email that to Erin and me?
Sure.
And then tomorrow or Friday, I'm planning to send a follow-up email with the recording, and we can attach that template to our email.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then with your contact information. So if anybody wants to contact you, they'll have that. Okay, so who has comments or questions? You can raise your hand if you know how to do that. Oh, Maureen knows how to raise her hand. Go ahead, Maureen.
Hi, thanks. Mine is a three-part question. It's quite personal. First of all, Carol, do you have an ethical will yourself? The second part is, when did you write it? And third, have you modified it since you started writing it?
Ah,
I love your
good
question.
questions. I have started one. Um, you know, I'm one of those people like a cobbler who doesn't have his own shoes. I've done bits and pieces of it. I have never done a complete one. And I'm now 76, so I think I probably should do one fairly soon. But yes, I want to do one. And what I've done instead is periodically write little pieces of it. I think I'm very aware of the questions, but at this point, I have focused more on kind of absorbing what other people have written and not really given enough to myself. So maybe your question will give me that little punch to do more. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Carol, you need to leave one for your son.
Yes, yes. I think he knows pretty much what I would write already, but that's why we don't do it. And I'm telling you why we should. So you're absolutely right. I need to do more than bits and pieces. If he put it all together, it probably would be one, but I need to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Susan or Suzanne?
Yes, Susan.
Susan, your turn.
Yeah, just Susan. Yes, I think just from what you were saying about Carol's son, I really like the idea of them as well for future generations. Like, I just think, what would it be like to have been able to read something like that from my grandparents, for example? Because sometimes as you're going through your life, you think, I really didn't know that much about them. You just know how they were in your life, but you didn't know that much about them as people before they were your grandparents, and even people you've never met, maybe your great grandparents or generations previous. I think that's really valuable.
I totally agree with that. And I think when I actually interview somebody to do one, and when I'm at Pilgrim's Hospice, what I often say is, what do you want your great 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 granddaughter to say to her daughter when she says, who was that person in that picture? And to be able to have that. I've talked actually to provincial archives, and they've said they would be delighted to, if people want to, leave copies, so that, like you say, we might not only know about ourselves, but learn about people who lived in this time and what was important to them. So there's so many ways it can be used so far in the future. We're talking about ethical wills, and there still are copies actually in museums of ethical wills that were written in medieval times and in Renaissance times. So they can have a very, very long history. Yeah. Thank you, Susan.
Carol, there's a question in the chat room. Does Carol charge to conduct workshops for seniors to get buy-in?
No, I do. Since I retired, I was a grief counselor, as Betty mentioned. Since then, this has been my passion project, partly because, as I said, it's a full circle thing for me to be able to do this. So I don't. I'm horrible at charging at anything. Even when I was doing my grief programs, I convinced Jewish Family Services to not charge anything, and that at the end of a series, if somebody was able to, they could make a donation. So I believe that when people are doing the most important things, you don't want money to get in the way. And I do everything that I'm doing now as a volunteer. I'm in Edmonton, by the way, to Robina. Ruspina? I'm not sure I got Ruspina. Anyway, I'm in Edmonton, originally from Chicago, but I've been here a long time.
Okay, Maureen.
Yes, thanks. Again, it's me. Your husband wrote his semi-directed, I suppose, to your son. It was a child at the time, and you have only one son.
Right.
But would you suggest that people address different parts of it to different members of their family if they have a larger family than one?
Actually, and he didn't, that I just read that part. He wrote to friends, he wrote quite a bit to me. That's the part I share. When I'm doing the ones, and he dictated it to me, and that's what I do with Pilgrim's Hospice, is people dictate it to me. I write it all out. Very often, the first thing that people want to talk about is their family. And so they often include messages, that things they want to say, sometimes appreciation, sometimes, a little kick saying, hey, you better sharpen up or something. So very often people start, when we're talking about an ethical will, start with messages to each member of their family, sometimes to their friends. And then as the conversation goes, it gets more and more into overall values. So I would say I've done 10 now where I've taken dictation of it. And in every case, they have first addressed different people in their family. Yeah. And so often that is, certainly that comes to mind when you're in a hospice situation, when you're dying. But I think always, part of your acknowledgement, part of what you've taught me, would make it kind of natural to be addressing at various times people in your life. Yeah. It basically, one of the people that I've trained who is practicing doing it now, and we practice with each other, always goes, you can't do it wrong, whatever you want to do. And so we give that message a lot. I mean, sometimes I just get stories, which is great. And people don't necessarily go to talking specifically about their values. But it's like I said, it's a framework to start with. And people can kind of take it wherever they want to go. And no one told Gary, for example, okay, go through your family and talk to them in this. It's just the way he was. He among other things taught logic and philosophy, and his ethical will, even as he was dying, was very logical and kind of went through each person. So people will do it in many different ways, and there isn't a wrong way to do it. It's reflecting you. So the language, the direction you do it will also reflect you.
I have a question. Well, I guess a comment too. I really love the potential of, like, from an intergenerational stance, of this to really build like understanding and empathy between generations. And yeah, I would just love to think about that more. So maybe we can talk more about that at some point. But if you're doing this in a group, say, or maybe even when you're doing it just with an individual, is there like any kind of prep work or like warm up activities or anything, or like kind of guidelines, I guess, that you would set ahead of time just to sort of like start out the process? Or do you get right into it? How does that typically look?
Actually, I usually do one, if I'm doing several sessions, which is what I normally do if I'm dealing with people who are not in a hospice. I do one session that's just a basic introduction and a chance to have these kinds of questions, and just to get people comfortable with the idea, and also the sense that there isn't a wrong way to do this, that this kind of gives you a general idea, but you can kind of go with it where you want to. I also, because it connects for most people, I do give them the story about how I learned about it, because this isn't kind of like, oh, here's a nice little trick, let's try this, and something new in the 2000s, in the 21st century, that it has a long history and that they are adding to it by doing it. And that, I can say after 40 years, just the impact it still has. So for people to respect that this is a really important thing to honor themselves, but also honor anybody who chooses to share with them. So I usually do that. In Pilgrim's Hospice, we have somebody who, when people first come into the hospice, they meet with the family and the individual and talk about a number of things, a number of services that the hospice offers. And they include talking about this. They have a brochure which gives a bit more description of it. And they have a choice, are you interested in this? If they're interested in it, then I get contacted and I come in, or the people I train, once they're trained, will come in, introduce themselves, maybe say a little bit about their being volunteers there and why. And then usually we start with either something like, why have you decided you want to do one? Is there anything particular you want to say? And in many cases, people are just kind of curious about it. And in that case, we usually start with, where were you born? And we and do you have any family? And if in every case I have been lucky enough that they have had family, and so, oh, tell me, do you have children, grandchildren? Do you want to say anything to them? So I kind of guide that. If it's in a group of people who are able to write their own, then usually they know that the first one is about it's just some basic things about themselves. And so we kind of get into it kind of easier that first week. And by the end, we are, in most cases, really getting to the point of what has been most important in my life. What will I miss out of life? That seems to get a lot of discussions going that people maybe haven't thought about before. So it's kind of a gradual move into values. We don't kind of walk in and say, okay, tell me your values. We're kind of gentle about it. I love the idea of it being intergenerational, and I'd be very interested in any thoughts that any of you have. And if you decide you would like to try something within your own organization, please feel free to contact me. You'll be the ones doing it, but if anything I've learned can help you, I'm very open to kind of giving you any moral support, any practical. There's a lot written about ethical wills. I actually have a friend I've connected with who is in Toronto and just finished a PhD on ethical wills. So periodically, it kind of got lost for a couple of years, actually more than a couple of years, a couple of centuries. And I would say about the 60s, 70s, 80s, it came back, and people began to know about it again in the States. And I can say this as a Canadian and have come from the States. It became a big business in a lot of places. So there are people making lots of money in California doing ethical wills with people. I've become so Canadian that I am quite comfortable not charging a whole lot to do it, or not charging anything to do it.
Okay, Rosbina has a question, and then I have one too. And so I'll kind of do them both together. My question would be, for organizations or people that facilitate intergenerational programs, and let's say they're adolescents or teenagers, okay? How can you see them doing that within the framework of an IG program? And then Rosbina says, could you please address language bridging, challenges of approaching the youth to tackle in cultural specific languages?
Okay, I'll kind of answer your first question, and I think I'll need a little bit more elaboration from Rosbina to understand specifically what you're asking. What I think is that often my experience, and I haven't been involved in the intergenerational programs that you are all involved in, but my experience is often it's a matter of teenagers, for example, interviewing seniors, or in some way, offering some service to seniors. What I really would hope would happen with this is that we give the message that what teenagers have to give of themselves is every bit as important as what the seniors have. And so we may have teenagers who, and I don't know, I haven't tried this, but we may have teenagers who say, well, I'm only 17. What do I know? Part of the message we're giving is, a lot. You know what it means to be 17. You know what it means to have the values of you in your culture. Perhaps this is a part answer to you, Rosbina. In your culture, in your what is important to you, what do you believe right now? And it may change over the years, but it is no less or more valid than what a senior has. And so I would want to be very, very balanced that way, that it's not teenagers interviewing seniors. It's teenagers talking about what they believe, seniors talking about what they believe, and having a tremendous amount of respect in both directions. So, Rosbina, could you speak a little more to your question for me to have a better understanding of how to answer it?
Thank you, Carol. Very inspiring. So my question is related to a lot of new immigrants, refugees that are now flocking into Calgary, Edmonton, and Alberta in general. And we find it, first of all, very challenging to involve the youths. We have the seniors who are very, very high need, but it's the youths I feel need a lot of work on and to get their buy-in, because even at schools, I don't think they have this curriculum or this sort of a direction to work around doing work with seniors. And so I find it very challenging to find our youths who are going to be committed to meeting interviews or to meet the dates that they set with the seniors. And a lot of youths, including myself at this age, believe you me, when I go into a senior's home, I get anxiety attacks, thinking, oh, is this going to be my future? So it can be quite traumatic for many youths. So what is your advice or direction on this? I'll take any comments.
First of all, I think education. I think people, you know, if people know about it, they can make a bit more enlightened choice. So I guess that would be my first thing, is it maybe even find a way to get into the schools so that in a non kind of confrontational way for a teenager, they can hear about it and say, is this something I want to do? Is this not? So I guess that would be my first thought, is education, maybe a couple of people. You think about, you know, those of you who've chosen this kind of profession probably were teenagers who thought about things like, who am I? What do I do? And so there will also be other teenagers now that have that. And so they may be the first ones to kind of put a toe in and check it out. As far as you're actually getting them working with it, it doesn't have to be over a long period. You can just do one session and kind of cover the most important things that as a couple, two people, as they think might be important. I think you might always have the problem of when you're younger and you look at seniors, that comment, is this going to be what happens to me? I know I'm going to get old someday. Am I going to get old and be active? Am I going to get old and be in a nursing home? I think you always have to deal with it, and it probably breaks slowly, one by one. And if you have a couple of kids that have a good experience with it, they may talk to other kids and other kids may try it. So I think recognizing from the beginning some of the things that you're talking about means that you can create something. Again, my word of the day obviously is gradual, but in some way, you know, so that people can be where they are and just kind of put a toe in this and see what it feels like. Hopefully, over time, more and more people might say, oh, it's okay, it's not dangerous, we can try this. And you know, in the same way that I said earlier, seniors do not very often have people asking their advice, and sometimes they'd like it to. Teenagers aren't often asked, what are your values right now? What is most important to you? And just the opportunity to be able to do that with each other, whether we call it an ethical will or just having that kind of conversation, I think it could be really important. You know, so tying in your own awareness of what might be difficult, and I would say if there's any way to get a little of this out, education, just what is it? Very often if people hear ethical will, they get scared. So you can even use another name. As I said, we called it What Truly Matters in one of our groups. For Pilgrim's Hospice, our subtitle is Legacy of Love and Learning. So sometimes ethical will, those words people can pull back from it. Work with what your groups are, what your audience is, and find something that's kind of palatable for them. Any other thoughts, questions? And if after this you think, you know, maybe there is a way I can use it in my organization, I'm going to repeat, please contact me if you want to talk about it, try on things for size. I think the idea of even beginning something like this is really exciting, and I'd like to support you in it whatever way I can.
I have a suggestion. I know some teachers have done this. not as an ethical will, but as just an exercise. And they've had students write letters to their future self.
Mm-hmm.
And then because people maybe feel more comfortable if they think they're talking to themselves and not somebody else in the future, right? And it might work, it might not, but it's just something that
It's
I
kind of in the
thought,
same area. Yeah.
yeah,
A
same
way in
ideas.
maybe. Yeah.
A way, yeah, exactly, a way in. But you would have to suggest kind of things. What kind of things would you tell your future self about? And then you put the list in that you're working on. So,
And the obvious one right now is, what has it been like to live through COVID? Because we are now experts on that, every one of us in our own way. And historically, I think that would be something that people, many generations, what was it like to live with yellow fever? What was it like to live with the various illnesses that happened before? This has been a huge part of everybody's life. And it might be something that's a bit more approachable to begin talking with. Danny.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just sort of going to piggyback onto Maureen's comment there. So I'm the seniors coordinator for the town of Banff. So we live in a small sort of rural community. And so right now we're trying to do like a pen pal program between older adults and grade 4 students. But listening to everything you've just said, I'm now sort of thinking, like, wouldn't this be great to do sort of a pen pal program with maybe the high school kids, and instead of calling it an ethical will, sort of doing all the things you said, like what do you want to see in the future and values, and not maybe branding it as an ethical will, but using your tactics as like a way to tie it into an intergenerational sort of program, I guess, in our community. So I don't know if you have any insight into that, into maybe like a back and forth thing between folks that may not even know each other, right? Just members of the community, and what they might have to pass on to the youth, and what the youth might want to share with our older generations.
My first reaction to what you said actually was to go, fourth graders. Wow, you could even do it with fourth graders. What do you like best in your life? I mean, it could be arranged. Basically, what we're saying is you're looking into yourself, and then you're sharing a little bit of what's important to you. So what's important to a fourth grader? They could tell a senior about that. What's important to the senior? They could tell. So it could be bent in so many ways to fit the audience. So I kind of got locked on that, but definitely working with teenagers as well. I think it's a little closer to the idea with seniors, but I think at any age, I mean, most fourth graders will tell you what they like. And to have somebody who says, I'm asking you that, I'm going to tell you what I like, you're going to tell me what you like. It's a way to have a conversation. By the way, I saw a chat question about, does it always end with a written document? When I do it with the hospice, I do type up what has been said. When I do it in groups, they may end up writing it on their own, but actually I thought it would be kind of a writing thing when I first started it. Nobody wanted to write it. They wanted to talk about it. And so what I did was encourage them to take some notes on what they're saying. And then if they want to, write it out. But it actually just led to great conversations, but nobody really wanted to write it. They wanted to talk to each other. And I think that's probably the core power of it, is the conversations in most cases.
And everybody has a recording device on their phones these days. So if they want to talk about it, they can record it.
We actually record the ones we do for the hospice, just so that we can make sure we get everything down. But when I've had people say, well, what if I can't write, or I don't want to write? Certainly you can make an audio. In the States, as a business, they are also doing videos. So, I mean, that there's that possibility too. Whatever way you can in some way make a record for you or for the people in your life, audio, visual, it doesn't matter. So we have a document in the case of the Pilgrim's Hospice. But in most cases, when I've run it with groups, if they've had a document, I have had people like 2 years after I've done a program, they've gone up to somebody and said, oh, I'm working on this thing I started 2 years ago. So some people do actually write it, but for a lot of people, it's just the discussion and the effect of having that discussion with other people. Yeah.
Okay, it's 11:26. There's one more question, but I don't know if we have time to do brainstorming, but let's put it out there. Would there be some questions we could brainstorm to make invitations more comfortable for youth? Rosvina, what do you mean to make invitations? To invite them to something like this, or to ask each other? Can you elaborate? Oh, you're on mute.
Actually, I'm not sure. I'm quite challenged to feel that, yes, I think I would like to start rounding up youths, but perhaps we need to be very tactful and, as Carol mentioned, be creative or innovative in our approach. But if there were certain questions, a way to ask or get youths informed about such a program, then are there any thoughts or questions? How do people just approach the kids or the school counselor or something to start a topic like this?
Can I answer that?
Please.
I would suggest not to introduce it as a program where you're going to be doing ethical wills. I would say talk to the school counselor or leadership, whoever at the school, and say you would like to start an intergenerational program where you bring the youth, the students, to meet with older adults, and they will form relationships. Because the focus of your program will actually be the relationship between the two generations. And then as they develop those relationships, you could introduce these questions and you don't even have to label it. Carol, what do you think?
I agree completely. Actually, ethical wills, or whatever we call it, is a tool. The point of it, as you said, is the conversations. And so anything that makes the conversation safe, once they feel safe enough, then you can say, here's something that we can do. That's one of the things that we can do together. And, you know, what I say with the students that I'm training now is, at some point I say, you know, traditionally it was called this. We can call it anything we want, but you've already established a bit of connection. Here's something we could do together. And so let them know there is such a thing, and it is historical, that it is something that has a long history of people doing, and that if we want to, we have the option of doing exactly what they've done over the years. Yeah.
Okay. And Erin's asking a question, but we don't have time. We should have planned this for an hour and a half. This is very popular. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And
Yes,
Erin,
thank
do you
you.
want to put up your slide? Because we have another event planned for this month. This was the cafe, which is more informal. And the next one will be November 25th. That will be for an hour and a half. And Amber Ducart, some of you may have heard of her. She's a university student doing her thesis, or she's actually just finishing up her thesis for a Master's of Social Work. And the topic was reciprocal benefits of intergenerational relationships. And she's going to talk about her research. And usually, you know, hearing about research is rather boring. Trust me, it will not be boring, because she didn't write an essay to discuss her results. She chose, and we at Linkages recruited seniors and youth. She chose 4 seniors and 4 youth. She interviewed them, and they each created a video to talk about the benefits of their intergenerational relationship. She'll be showing some of those videos and talking to you about her research. So you won't want to miss that. So go to CORE November 21st, and CORE Alberta, of course, and register for that. Okay, I think that's it, right? Oh, and we have 66 people in our group. Please go and join CORE, and then go and find our group. and join our group, because I send emails out to the group regularly. And so you don't want to miss out. Okay. So I want to say thank you, and lucky you, no feedback today. I'm kind of transitioning from Linkages to starting my own business and volunteering in this sector. So I have to get regrouped. So next time, expect a feedback form. Okay, so thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks for coming. And you will hear from me either tomorrow or Friday. Okay. Any last comment, Carol? No?
Just thank you for your questions. They were very thoughtful,
Yeah.
your attention, and I hope it maybe kind of lights a little spark. So thank you for letting me come today. I appreciate it.
And before you leave, in the chat, Erin just put a link for the November 21st event. So if you want to click on that, you can go and register right away. It's free. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.